Good morning. Happy Monday. We are here live with Mommy Mondays. We have a special guest today. And so I'm going to give it a few minutes for everyone to log in and tune in. I'm super, super excited to be here today. For those of you that are new to Mommy Mondays, welcome. I am Kia Ortiz, and this is Mommy Mondays. Please go. Uh-huh. We're a group of mothers coming together to strengthen and encourage each other in the joy of motherhood. And so those little feet that you hear are my sons who are home. Yes, I'm a homeschooler. And so we're going to set some ground rules today. One, ignore the kids if you hear them. That's my life. Welcome to it. Secondly, uh, for those that have been to Mommy Mondays before, you know we love to chat in the comments. This is a platform where we want to hear your voice too. We want to hear your questions. We want to hear your thoughts, especially because I know there's mothers out there and just women in general who have a wealth of knowledge that you can share to enlighten, encourage other moms with your experience and your knowledge. So please comment. We'll be reading the comments throughout the conversation today. And we'll stay in the comments too, even when the live is over, in case you have some questions later on, or we just dive deep in the comments after the live. Me and Lenneris will be chiming in. And the last thing is share, like this video. We want to get this message out to as many people as possible because I don't know if you guys noticed, but 2022 parenting is way different than it was before. And so we want to be able to encourage other moms and just people out there in general um, with some just insight. And so today is no different. For those of you that know me, you know that mental illness is a passion of mine. Understanding it, equipping myself to have conversations with those that are considered mentally ill. Um, and I'm also a mom, so that's another passion of mine. So this is my jam. And so we'll be able to talk about this all day long, but we're trying to not narrow down the conversation today, just so we can get on some key pointers. And so if there's a specific question that you have, please chime in. We do have questions here today. But the reason why mental health, mental illness is my jam is because for years I've struggled with depression. I've attempted suicide. I have dealt with it even as being a mom. And I saw how being pregnant, I saw how the fourth trimester, I've dealt with postpartum depression. I saw that how that kind of exacerbated what was already in me, in my mind. And so I really dive deep into how to understand the mind, how to understand myself, the journey of so many other people like me. And so I'm really appreciative that our society has shifted from the stigma of mental illness or mental health is a taboo thing. That we've really shifted into a place of understanding that this is an important organ too. It is vital to our survival. And just like if we had diabetes, we would need to take insulin. Some of us need to take medicine. Some of us need a counselor. Whatever we need, I got your back. I'm on board 1000% for you to do what you need to do to be mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually healthy so that you can be the best mom for your children. And so today's conversation is to get the perspective of a child and how our mental well-being impacts them. I don't know if you noticed, but we're seeing a lot of conversations stemming around mental illness and mental wellness. And if you are someone that's dealing with a mental illness, know that you're not alone. Know that you're not broken. You can still be a phenomenal person, a phenomenal mother. And so some of the questions that we're going to deal with today is, how do we deal with frustration with our children, with ourselves, with our children around? Are we really responsible for how they turn out as an adult? Or are they just born that way, or are they just that way themselves, no matter how much we do our part? As a mother, how do we impact our child and how do we encourage them? And so many different questions that we have, but let's get started, okay? So, without further ado, let's bring on Miss Lenneris Hernandez.
Hi.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. How are you doing?
Good. I'm so excited. So happy to be here. Feel so honored and privileged and just thankful. So I'm so excited.
Oh, I am grateful for you to be on with us, um, especially because when I first met you, it was like all these questions, all these things I had in my mind. You gave me language. You gave me the emotional, like, support. Like, girl, that is a thing. And let me tell you, I deal with these kids all day long. I deal with these type of mamas all day long. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm not broken. It's a thing.
It's not you, right? You are not alone. And you're doing a great job.
So, amen. So I really just appreciate the work that you do every day. Can you tell us a little bit about you for those people that don't know you and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So everyone, I am currently a therapist for kids who are in foster care. So I've been doing that for about a year. And prior to that, I was a social worker County, which is county out here in California, for child welfare services. And in my department, my job was to help with family reunification and family maintenance, which means is after the kids have already been separated from their parents, my job was to help those families get back together. And that was through like them following their services, going to parenting classes, getting drug tested. We need to then recommend to the court, yeah, they should come back together. And unfortunately, when that didn't happen, say it's not safe for the child to be back with their parent. So heavy stuff, heavy stuff. But
Yeah.
I am grateful for sure for that job because I will say to the end of my days, it was boot camp, whatever job you put me in after that. My own mental health was definitely challenging all of that because it's not definitely not for the weak of heart. Like hang on to the Lord every single day. I was just like, Lord, help, right? Just being transparent in that. That's kind of like my work experience. So prior to that, biology, master's in social work, and then that's kind of what connected me to the job with child welfare. Did my 2 years, and I'm in the mental health clinician role. So much happier where I am now. Yeah.
Yeah, because I can imagine how heavy it is to watch this happen.
No.
And you're rooting for the mom, you're rooting for the parents, and you're also hearing the stories of the child and how the child feels. And really, you're like, Mom, if you would get it right, your baby
Yeah.
wants you, your baby needs you. Um, but sometimes it's difficult to be a mom. It's hard. I can speak for myself. It's the hardest thing I've ever had to do.
Yeah.
And I think what makes it hard is it's every day. It's all day. There is never a moment of I am not a mom. And so that can weigh
Mhm.
on you. Um, okay, the tears are about to flow. It can weigh on you
Yeah.
because sometimes you just want a break. You could take a break from work. You can
Mhm.
take a break from so many different things, but your kids, they're on your mind when you're at work. They're on your mind when you're driving. They're on your mind when you see stuff going on in the world. They're on your mind when you're supposed to be sleeping and they're sleeping and you're creeping in to watch them sleep to make sure they're breathing. So your sleep's gone. You
Yeah.
eat cold food, you drink cold coffee, you know?
No
And it's
escape.
funny. Would you say?
There's no escape. That there's no
Yes,
escape.
yes.
Yeah.
And even when you go on the breaks, you go on vacation to get away from your kids, yes, I condone it. I think that's great. But you're on vacation thinking about who?
Mhm.
Your baby.
Mhm.
And
So
so it's a
true. It's
constant,
so true.
yes, yes, it's a constant weigh on your mind. And so I think oftentimes we may put ourselves in a posture of judging moms that have kids in the welfare system. Um, or even kids themselves. And so today's conversation, I'm very grateful because not only do I feel like you're going to give us insight on that world, that realm, um, but also you're going to empower us with some of the things that we deal with being present parents every day. And so the first thing I want to ask you is, have you seen a change in the mental health of mothers since the pandemic?
Um, and I'm so glad that like you mentioned all that, Kia, because I just also wanted to add I am currently not a mom, not yet, God willing, one day. So I just wanted to like put that out there to be transparent, right? Because I'm also from the child's perspective of who I work with, but also right, like right now I'm only a daughter in that
Yeah.
respect. So ultimate respect, just like bow down to all the parents because it's not an easy job. So I just wanted to okay. So as regards to the question, have you seen a change? So I think that and I mean it seems like well duh, right? Where I've seen like these feelings, right? But also like what comes with that since
Yeah.
the pandemic, right? Where it's like, okay, we were literally all of us were, but like you were saying, like you're a parent 24/7, you're with them all the time. So I think that I definitely see, even with my own friends, where finally we have language for like postpartum depression being more normalized and we're given the space to talk about it more. But I think in that, which I'm grateful for, that I think are like more willing to talk about it, right? In the realm of my work, I would say that sadly, an increase. I feel like when the pandemic hit, there was an increase of what we would call kids who test positive at birth for whatever substance. And it's like, sadly enough, right? And I think, like, this is just me, like, posturing a theory. I think that with like the increase of like substance use, right? Maybe there was an addiction from like since we were young, but also it's a coping skill for a lot of people, right? It's like, I feel stressed, let me go do this. Oh, I'm overwhelmed with this, let me go do this. I don't feel loved by this person, let me go do this, right? So I think that like if we really think about it, it's all tied to how we cope with, whether it be labeled as depression or not, it be labeled as anxiety or not. We all have a mental health status, right? And within that, we
Yes.
have ways to be able to deal with it, right? Like when Lenneris is stressed, sometimes I like to go some ice cream, right? Like, like that's maybe one of my coping skills with the candle. Or like, what? Please stay over there for a second. I'm not ready. Like those are different coping skills. But when we're brought up in families that those coping skills that we're taught are already maladaptive, it's kind of like we're at the beginning of the race behind because we're giving the improper tools. So I think that like with the
Mhm.
pandemic, within like my realm of work, I definitely saw an increase of like those babies coming in who were just testing positive. And a part of me feels of the isolation and not knowing how to like deal with like these feelings of like just top of that, like imagine like you're already like socioeconomic status is low, right? Like you're already dealing with
Mhm.
like the things that you usually have access to with like maybe that like you're on food stamps and stuff like that. Systems are impacted. Then like your childcare is impacted, your work is impacted, and on top of so you have all these other stressors, and then you're alone with them all the time, right? So I feel like I shift. And again, like my heart goes out to like all those moms because I'm just like, well, yeah, like it makes sense to see some sort of like change, right? But unfortunately, I did notice like that trend. There was an increase of babies who were testing positive at birth. And I wonder, like, is that because like during pregnancy, the support you would typically have during a pregnancy, like baby showers and like gender reveals and everyone's coming to
Yeah.
visit, like at the hospital, that wasn't happening anymore, right? So I wonder if maybe that's why. I'm sure it's not a study, but this is just like my opinion. What was going on with all of that?
Yeah, and that makes sense too, because like you said, that's how people cope. And if we're already dealing with the hormonal changes, right? And you can't go
Mm,
physically to see the doctor. You don't know what the world is going to look like. Is the world really coming to an end? And then if you're pregnant
mm,
and have other kids, now you're dealing with constant noise where you used to can escape and now you can't. They're now having you be the teacher and mom and the cook and the
mhm.
cleaner and you're working and so it's like all this stuff has kind of happened that weighs on your mind. And the one thing that I commend so many people on is we were never prepared for something like this. We're already not really prepared on how to deal with mental health because we've been told for the longest,
Mhm.
get over it, pray it out, fast it out, um, just go out and party, escape it. So we weren't already prepared to deal with the existing stressors. Now they're all compiled on
Yeah,
us times 10 and no support. And so I didn't even
exactly.
think about the aspect of babies being born that way. I'm thinking about the ones that are not even pregnant and how it weighed on our mind. Then on top of that, you're pregnant. I can't imagine. And so
Um,
again, for those of us that may look at someone and be like, "Wow, why would you do that?" It really puts you in a posture of you're doing the best that you can.
yeah,
And
right.
for some of us, the best we can is that is alcohol, is drugs, because you need that sense of release. And so it's difficult for moms in those type of situations. And I can imagine being a social worker how your heart can go out to them, um, because
Yeah,
some of this stuff isn't just, oh, you just choosing to be a bad mother. Some of
right.
this stuff I don't know any other way. No one ever taught me, no one ever prepared me. um, and so from that mindset of a mother, how has it been for the child dealing with their own stressors and seeing the mother? Did you see an increase of the mental health, or sorry, change in the mental health of a child because of the pandemic?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I saw a lot of like increased social anxiety, right? Which is consequence, right? Like I saw definitely like once we started like opening up again, like when I went to go see kids, like I mean typically like of course they're not happy to see the social worker, but like you know it was like they'd be more isolated. I think even like outside of that realm, just like in general, like to this day, like whenever I help out like at youth retreats or teenagers, like the ability to just even like engage in something like small talk is just like it has gone down, right? And I think that with like the mental health stressors and all of that, I think because you know, I've humans we are made for right, like we're built to have interpersonal relationships. We're built to others, right? Like that's what our hearts have been made for. I'm a firm believer in that. So I feel like when, like, on top of that, right, with like, I think that it was like intensified trauma for the kids because like of whatever abuse, neglect they endured with their families, right? On top of that, it's a pandemic, so you're already not having a normal school experience, and then like school, like I feel like that whole like 2019 2020 that whole time it was just like you know what we're lucky if they even logging on like it was just it was crazy but I feel like and then with that like a lot of the moms would become frustrated right with their kids like they're not logging on and then it's like the layer of like I'm the social worker so I have to make sure you're making sure that you're right and so it's like I remember like I would see them well you know like they need log on and this and that because like the schools would like Johnny isn't whatever this and that and I would have to follow up with mom and mom would be like well you want him to log on but then like he won't and, you know and it's the added stress of like okay normal things that going through but on top of that you have a CPS case right on top of that you have that I need to complete all of my services to get my kid back and maintain my kid in my care and I feel like with the kids it was like I'm going through what everything that the world is going through. I'm thinking of like these two brothers specifically. Also, like this increased. He had ADHD, but he was having like a tougher time regulating his emotions and just really being able like, anger like he did didn't know how to externalize properly, right? When I say externalize, be able to like let it out. He was getting like in trouble at home. He was like just out late, like going with like all these different like influences, right, with older kids or whatever. And mind you, like mom was like recovering, like she was trying to stay sober, but she would have a relapse. But then like also like this family specifically, dad was like in jail. He got out during the time that we had the case. He got out and then ended up trying to find mom and the kid. And one of them, like there was like this moment where he called the cops and the kid was there standing in front of his mom telling like dad like don't come near my mom, right? So imagine as a kid, right? Imagine as a child, I want to say 12 maybe 11 12,
Oh my.
and he's over here like, you know, I have to be mad at the house against his own dad, right? So you think of all these things of the trauma that these kids go specifically within my job, right? Or what it was. And then pandemic on top of that, because then access to resources that they would typically get, like maybe occupational therapy in school or counseling in school, these different things they don't have access to because they're literally at home. Um, so I think that I think my work of seeing how there was a change in children with the kids and was just seeing like I felt that their trauma was intensified because the way that we would usually address the issues, it we had to get creative and we're all just kind of like, you know, stumbling this kid the support that they need. So just to wrap up that story, because I don't hear the dad got arrested, put away. He's like in another state now. The kids are fine.
Okay.
Was able
Thank
to
you. I was like, wait.
like happened. So they were reunified. The case closed successfully. Mom was able to keep her kids. She was there with her kids elsewhere, restraining order, all that good stuff. So that's how that ended. But I feel like when I say that, I feel like their mental health was impacted by their trauma, already existing trauma being intensified, where it's like, you know, I feel like it's, and maybe this is a systemic issue, but we've never dealt with the pandemic before. Lack of support in the way we usually would for those kids. Yeah, that was like just like the way that I feel like I saw it manifest.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but even when you're speaking, I understand that we're talking about an extreme case, right? Because um,
Right.
that's that may not be everyone's situation.
Right.
But even if we just look at the fact of parents that were in the same household that were not used to being in the same house in the same space all the time, there's arguments happening,
Yeah.
there's fighting going on where that child has to feel like they
Yeah.
have to pick sides. Divorce has happened. Now I'm not able to go see that other parent as much,
Yeah.
or I feel like I'm non-existent, I'm isolated from my friends, and I'm just stuck here with my parents. We're talking about people that were accustomed to sending children to school to eat lunch and breakfast. Now they're at home, and that financial strain.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so kids weren't eating. Um, so there's a lot of stuff that's happening. And I'm glad that we're talking about this because some people can say, well, the pandemic is over. That's not going to be the case, or that's not the case anymore. But the damage, the trauma is already done. I know
Yeah.
for me personally, um, it kind of took me from this space of uh well, I'm gonna just wait to nap time, I'm gonna just wait to bedtime, or you know what I mean, just wait till your grandma comes, you know what I mean, like anticipating this help that's going to
Yeah.
come, to now it wasn't there. And so now
Right.
after the pandemic I'm kind of like, okay, the pandemic taught me I need to reinforce some things, some boundaries. I need to take care of myself better. I need to figure out and get language on dealing with my children, because now that this has happened, it really has made me step up. Like, you can't just wing it. You know what I
Right.
mean? You need
Right.
help.
Yeah.
Um, and so now afterwards, I have become more comfortable with asking for help.
Hmm. It's
Um,
beautiful.
I've become more comfortable with saying, I don't have it. Mommy needs a timeout. I can't do this. I need to escape. And
Hmm.
so I'm glad we're talking about this because I want to reinforce that those skills that we got during the pandemic that we would call survival skills, There's stepping stones,
Yeah.
right? Because it's like, I survived, I'm done. No, don't forget what you learned. Don't forget
Yeah.
what you saw, because those are stepping stones for you now to be able to thrive. Um, we shouldn't have to need these survival moments to know that, hey, I'm important. To know that, hey, my child's
Mhm.
being able to regulate their emotions is important. Seeing a counselor is
Mhm.
important. And I love what you're doing, because yes, you were a social worker, but you're also now a mental health clinician. So it's kind of like, even before he gets those bad situations, our kid needs to talk to someone. We need to talk to
Yeah,
someone,
absolutely.
to be proactive.
Absolutely.
And so, one thing I know, I personally, last week I interviewed my children, and one of the things that they brought out was, when mommy's frustrated, I send them to the room. When they're frustrated, I send them to the room. And that might not be translating over to their world as what I thought in my mind. So, one
Okay.
of the things I wanted to ask you, um, of course, we're talking from the child's perspective.
Right.
As a mother, when we're frustrated with situations, we're frustrated with the child. How should we handle
Yeah.
ourselves with our kids?
Mhm. Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like I think first of all, like take the pressure off that I have to have it together 24/7, right? That like expectation, like but like mom is like, yeah, well, I got it together time. The kids listen. They don't, take it off. Okay,
It's a
it's unrealistic.
lot.
It's not true. Exactly. Like first of all, like let's just strip ourselves of that. Just because, like to be able to humanize ourselves, right? Or as moms, humanize yourself because then it's like you're the superhero, right? Where it's like, okay, but that's great and all. However, even superheroes have side support, right? And so this like
Yes.
expectation that we have to like have it together all the time is just not realistic. So let's just like strip ourselves of that. And then when we are in those moments where like baby's crying, my other kid is drawing on the walls, and then the other one is breaking a vase, and well, things are half being able obviously like make sure that everyone's safe, clean up the glass and all that, but also just be able to normalize like mommy's having a hard time because of this. She's gonna go over here. It's normalizing a healthy escape, right? It's normalizing taking a
That's
break and
good.
showing the kid like when I can say I'm feeling this way, like I am sad because this happened. I need to go in my room now, or I need to just go read a book or like draw or whatever it may be for your kid. I need to go jump on the trampoline for a little bit, like whatever that is. Because when you model it for your kid, when you say like, "Mom, like this because of this, she needs to take just 5 minutes over here, and she will be back." It's showing the kids, oh, I feel, and then take a break. And then I can identify how I feel. Mommy's going to listen, right? And she's going to respect that. It's really just because really like what parenting is, right? You guys are creating that foundation, right? And I'll say that a lot today, foundation, right? You guys are creating that foundation, and with those skills, like we were talking about earlier, with those healthy coping skills, like you guys have the power to really be able, it's just all modeling, right? It really like whatever they see, that's what they do, right? They do what they see,
Come
right?
on.
They do what they see. They
That
don't do
part.
what you say, right? And so I think that's why us like in our own experience, we get times when our parents are like, well, make sure you do this, and then you're like, well, what are you doing, right? Like I'm sure there, right? And I
Yes.
think that I know that, but then like maybe when we become parents, it's different. It's kind of like we forgot like that part of our like childhood experience. So it's just kind of to like highlight that when
Right?
like you're like doing that with your kids, right? Like when you're faced with a good way to deal with it, modeling that, normalizing it, it humanizes you to your kids, and then also creates that space, that safe space for your kids to come forth and be able to deal in a healthy way. And then figure out what works for each kid, right? Because each kid is different. But that's like what I would say for them. Yeah.
That's good, to normalize being human and us being the example.
Yeah.
That reminds me of something that I heard so much as a kid. do as I say, not as I do.
Mm.
Which
Like
then
what?
it's, yeah, it's like, as a kid, well, okay, 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 okay. But then it's like, but how, you know what I mean? How is
Mhm.
that okay for you, but it's not okay for me? So then that must mean what you're telling me to do isn't really working because I don't see you doing it. So I'm
Exactly.
gonna do what you do. So
Exactly.
then I'm so glad you said that because I think, and it kind of segues us into the next question.
Right.
I think so often, right?
Hmm.
So often we hear, well, they just turned out that way. I have no control over that.
Mm.
And I can speak for myself personally. I'm 35 years old, and I know so many people can relate to this. We're up in our 30s trying to gain emotional intelligence, trying to understand our triggers because we've tried so many
Yeah.
things so long that we're like, wow, I really don't know myself. I really don't know what makes me tick, what makes me anger. You set me off, that set me off, that made me so stressed. Because of that, I did this. And it's like, wait, the accountability starts with us.
Mhm.
And so when we think as a parent, I really want to ask you this question because I feel like it's a dance, it's a balance, right? Because our kids are born how they're born. Okay, we're not going to get
Mhm.
into transgender sexuality, none of that. We're just talking about their mental makeup, what makes them tick, what makes them that have that personality. I feel like there's a balance
Mhm.
between what we're responsible, like you said, that foundation
Yeah.
and who they are. And
Yeah.
so, as a parent, we might think, well, either I'm responsible for everything, how they turn up, what opportunities they have in life. I'm responsible for everything. And then you have the other ones, look, I did the best I can. They on their own. How they turn out is how they turn out. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
So, I want to ask you, are we really responsible for how they turn out? Is that on us?
Yeah. 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 Right. Like, and again, I feel like this is we need to lift ourselves, try
Right? You see
for
why I
ourselves.
have
This is
mental
so
health?
much pressure. Like, it's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure. Like, if I were, I'd be stressed even
Mhm.
like thinking that, right? Like, that's a lot of pressure. And it's not to minimize the importance of parenting, the importance of your, like, it's not to minimize any of that. But I think it's also just to kind of like, okay, all right, let's take a breath, right? Because that's like a very heavy, like heavy question. Not a lot of people worry about
Yeah.
this. Like, am I really responsible? And I think, and like also I was telling you that like I was able to this too to get, and some of my coworkers are parents, so it was good to like trade ideas and everything. One of the things that really came up is that as parents, and like my beautiful analogy that I really liked. So she was saying that like as parents that we put down, we give them, we clothe them, we bathe them, we give them faith, we give them education, we provide all these foundation, right? That's like the dirt in the soil. Now, whether they choose to turn that foundation, that dirt, into flowers or weeds, it's their choice, right? Because then the thing is that there's all this pressure, like, oh, this, I took them to the best school, to the best this, the best that. But the way that, I mean, I think of like my own friends. I have friends who are like, I have friends who have been homeschooled. I have friends who went to private school. I have friends who are like in public school all their lives. But even within the same family, you'll have siblings who go one way and the other one goes the other way, right? And the thing is that, again, like as parents, like your key is the foundation. You give them that love. And the thing, okay, I'm gonna try to keep this part short because the thing about love, that unconditional love, right? Because I think that a lot of times, and I don't think it's intentional, but I definitely see like also like just like within ministry, like there are parents who like they'll bring their kids to the retreat and they'll be like, all right, they got this, and this problem. Okay. And then when Sunday comes, when they pick them up, I got the same kid. What happened? I'm like, this is not a car wash, right? Like, this is like a retreat. It's an experience. We're here to plant seeds, right? And essentially, like, because we're not living with the kids, like you're living with the kids. And so the thing is like about planting those seeds, and you guys water it like through their childhood, by rubbing their back when they're sick, by telling them that you love them every day, and even when they mess, true test, right? And I think it's like with any relationship, like when friendships and romantic relationships, like when things are hard, the way you respond to me tells me where we stand and how you really care, how you really love, right? Like I mean that, like with my husband, like if when I'm like feeling bad, if I'm like giving him attitude, if I'm giving him lip, if I'm like being cranky, the way he responds to me in that moment shows me the way that he loves me, right? So in parenting, the same way, kind of coming back to like the last question, right? Where it's like things are going rough and bad, it like really aids and like grasp like how that's like that test of love, additional. And I'm like, I mean, that's I'm like I'm about to get a little preachy, right? But like that's why I say like unconditional, because like the same way that God is completely unconditional, like gave his only son, and even on the cross, Jesus was like, God forgive them for they know not what they do. Like forgive them, like that doesn't make any sense, like me, like humanly, right? But for us to be able to really like emulate that unconditional love, where even when you mess up, I still love it. Also, it's a dance though, so that's why I say parenting is so hard, because it's a dance. Because also it's like I also don't want to enable, right? Or it's like I love you,
Yeah, that.
I don't want to enable you. My job is to shape you, give you that to you, whether that gives flowers or weeds, right? I don't know if that makes sense. I kind of
No,
it,
because
but
if I wonder if you can hear my mind explode, if you can catch that
okay.
over the internet, because it has just like just blah 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 blah. Because wow, I never gave thought to how am I loving my kid in the most difficult times, right? For an
Mm-hmm.
example, my kid comes in here. I told you multiple times not to do that. And I'm
Right.
like, wow, even how I respond in my frustration, is that telling them that mommy loves you no matter what? Because
Mm-hmm.
what I see is my kid tries to hide stuff. What I see is my kid busts out in tears. What I see is my child is afraid of me. And I'm like, but I love you. And I tell you all the time, I love you. I sacrifice my body, my job, everything I want to do for you. And you're not receiving that I love you. And it's like,
Yeah.
wow, I never, even when you talk about the cross, I never saw that. And look, my love for you goes so deep that even in your mistakes, my love is unwavering. And so when I think about it
Mm.
that way, and especially we're talking about mental health, it takes mental strength, mental
Mm.
capacity, and an abundance of knowledge of self to be
Yeah.
able to be calm, to speak in love, to be patient, to show all the fruits, right? Because I'm not just
Mm-hmm.
parenting for all these other things that, I need you to make sure you're educated. I need to make sure you have faith. I'm not parenting just for those things. I'm parenting for your most difficult moments.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
Yes, Kayla.
that
Yeah.
right there,
Yes. I don't know
it
if
like
that added
turns.
pressure or
Wow. So really I'm parenting for the and preparing for the most difficult moments and spaces. And so I got to make sure that I'm good in self in order to reciprocate what I want you to get from me. Because my son had talked about the other day when did I interviewed them about him hitting him in the mouth, and I've
Mhm.
been taught that I've been popped in the mouth. I pop in the mouth, right? Um, and just so that you guys know, I don't subscribe personally to any style of parenting because just like we're talking about, your kid can turn it to flowers or they can turn it to weeds. I got like 4 different personalities, right? I can give somebody a seed, one will eat it, one will burn it, one will grow a whole garden, and the other one will bury it. So I'm kind of like, so I can give what I think is right, but the child is going to take it how it's going to take it. And so it's my job to kind of be like, I got to figure out what works for each child. So I don't subscribe to a parent. If you do, then
Exactly.
that's cool. But sometimes I feel like that pigeonhole. And one of the ones that I hear a lot is gentle parenting. And it's funny because even how I hear them talk, well, Tommy, you know what I mean? I laughed at that, but I don't know if I can do that, because you told me it's gentle parenting, but I can do it knowing that, oh my gosh, this is the opportunity to show the depths of my love for my child. So
Right.
I'm gonna reel it in a little bit, and I'm going to say, I don't have to be, oh, Tommy. I can be firm. I can explain. I can articulate because love explains, right? Love,
Hmm.
and it's so funny because I
Exactly.
watched, who was that? Kanye West the other day. He said, an artist doesn't have to explain their art, but a leader does. A
Hmm.
leader has to explain themselves.
Wow, that's very
And so I
impressive.
was like, that is so profound because as adults, we think we don't need to explain. You just going to do what I'm going to tell you to do. But if I step back and say, okay, this is an opportunity to show the depths of my love. And this is an opportunity to give you those tools for when it's your turn for
Mm.
you to pull from something, it really does shift. And so what I'm hearing you say is, are your kids going to come out how they're going to come out, right? And we have a part to
Yeah,
play in that. And one of the parts we have to play is a
definitely.
foundation and tools.
Yeah.
And so I love that because I'm like, okay, even if they turn out bad and difficult, and I can look back on my parenting and kind of check those boxes, it's kind of like, well, baby, it's on you. My mom always said,
Mhm.
if you end up in jail, I'm not gonna bail you out.
Yeah.
I'm
You see,
not.
the love is
And it's kind
there,
of
but we're
funny
not
thinking about,
enabling, right? The love is there, but we're not
right?
enabling.
See, and
Yeah.
that's the difference. Love says there's consequences, so you sit in that jail. And a lot of people say, well, if you love me, you would take me out. No, no. I love you enough to teach you. I love you enough to hold your hand through the process, but
Exactly.
not make you think it's okay,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. And that's what's, I feel like that's why I have such respect for parents because I feel like, especially the way the world is changing now,
Mhm.
like everything that used to be okay is not okay and vice versa, right? And so, like,
Yeah.
as things start to change, ideology start to be more popular, more mainstream, all the stuff, whatever. It's like, okay, I'm
Mhm.
gonna love you in it, right? But not condone what you're doing, right? And that dance is very hard as a parent to a child. Like I can't. I like my husband and I have had a conversation if that happens, right? Like how do we love but not condone, right? Because it's so hard. Like when it's your friend is different, right? Well, I didn't raise you. I love you. You know, we straight, right? But
Yeah.
when like how do you just that shift, and then it really is like that shift of like, okay, in those hard moments, how am I showing you that I love you, but how do I do it while I'm still forming you, shaping you, giving you those tools, that foundation, right? Because like you said, like a parent's like job is never done. Like you're a parent till the end of your days, like that's it. And I think it's just like an ongoing it's an ongoing lesson, right? And the thing is, like, like I said, like I'm not a mom, but I'm very grateful for like this community, and obviously for having me met you, Kia, and everything, able to like
Mm.
just like share these spaces. Because the thing is, I am confident one day to have a child that I'm gonna like have you as a sister and a friend to lean on, and I'm just like forever grateful for that, you know, and being able to like have that space
Mhm.
because this like having the spaces to actually talk about this, like you know what all the like videos and like the talks that like that you've done, but you don't know like that mom who's at her wits end and it's like I can't do this anymore. She needed to hear the one thing that you said in that video 5 weeks ago. You know, like you don't know. So that's just
Aw,
like a lot. Just
me
hyping
too.
you up, right? But but it's true. It's true. Another thing, because you were saying
Yes.
about like you know because I said so, and I'm also just gonna like hype up my parents. I know that's something that I was very grateful for growing up was that my parents like whenever they like if I asked to go out, they'd be like no, whatever. They would explain to me why. They would explain. They'd be like this and that. But then also I was allowed the space and like yes, and then they'd be like, do you agree? I was like no, I don't agree there. But I remember being very grateful for being given the space to be like, no, I don't agree. But I don't think that that's right. And they're just like, okay, well, you're still staying. I'm like, all right, fine. But like, be able
She
to
had a
tell them
voice.
that. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Having a voice, being heard, not being discounted. Like, I value that so much. I like, to the end of my days, I would say like that, like, golden star. Good job, my puppy. Like, like, I'm like, that was good, right?
Oh,
But
wow.
yeah, something that I always was grateful
That's
for.
good.
Yeah.
That's good because I think at the end of the day, we tend to do that as a kind of posturing ourselves. I'm the head, I'm the leader, and this is you just fall in line. Well, then the problem is we're
Right.
not showing them how to be leaders. We're showing them how to be followers, and that their voice doesn't matter. I mean, again, like I said earlier, you know, we have so many adults still trying to find their voice, trying to
Yeah.
find their place in life because they've been squashed for so long. And
Hmm.
so, oh, that's so good. That's so good. All right. So before you go, I want to ask you, because this is what you're dealing with so much, I want to ask you one
Yeah.
first, when you're speaking to children, um,
Hmm.
what is, would you say, the number one thing they wish their mother would do for them?
Okay. I just have to split it up between like age groups though, because I would say like the younger ones. I would say maybe
Okay,
like,
yeah.
yeah, I would say like maybe like 8 or 9 and down. All of them, all of them. Like the two most common things are like, I wish she would play with me more, and I wish she wouldn't yell so much. Those are like the two things that are just like recurring. Play with me more, and like the two things with like the littles.
Okay.
I would say like, yeah, like like preteen and up, being heard and being trusted are like the two biggest things that I've seen. Like heard and then being trusted by their mom. Those are the two biggest things. Yeah, I would have to split it up like that because you things at each phase in your life, right? Like when you're little, like
Yeah.
you're all about the toys, and then when you're like a teenager, I need my independence, right? So it's like being heard and being trusted when they're older, and then when they're like little, play with me more and not yell so much. Like those are the two things. But like also normalize that like those are like that's a common thing. So if you yell, right, like other people yell too. Like I know that I will like if I'm gonna yell. It's okay, right? It's not to be like bash, like, oh, you're bad for yelling. No, like it's like recognizing it. Okay, I just need to work on this. Let's just keep working on it. We're just gonna keep working on it.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good thing that you say that because one of those parenting techniques is don't yell at your child. You're doing so much damage. So now I got to go do a 180. Well, if I haven't developed
Yeah,
the tools and the coping, right, and the
right,
understanding on to why am I yelling? What other ways I can deal with this? How do I find myself the time to calm down? You know what I mean? So it's a
right, right.
process, and so I'm kind of like, please, if
Yeah,
this is you, and look, I'm talking to myself, if this is you, it's okay to be aware that you yell a lot, but begin the process of dealing with it. Okay?
exactly. Yeah, it's
Okay.
okay. We
Right.
have to, we have to be
Girl, I can't tell you how many
more
times.
kind.
Yes. And so I love that you said, and so which leads us to the last question for today. I love this conversation, and I pray that I can have you back on because one of the things that's coming up in my mind is
Mhm.
I just would like to have a conversation on punishment. I know everybody's household is
Oh,
different, right? And correction, but I would love to
yes.
get your idea because what we may consider punishment and correction, how
Mhm.
does that translate over to a child's mind? Because
Yeah.
maybe our goals is not really doing what we may want it to do. So I just want to kind of tap into that when we're talking about punishment, because we're talking about in the worst of worst, that's where it's vital for them to know that we love them. But also I don't want to enable you, so I don't want to be
Exactly.
a yes ma'am. So what are some things that I can do to where, okay, this is an okay punishment because the kid can understand this at this age, this level.
Mhm.
So if that's okay, I would love to have you back on for that
Yeah,
conversation.
of
Okay.
course.
Okay.
Of
Cool.
course.
Um,
Of
so when we
course.
leave today, I want you to close us out. When we leave today, What you've already told us as moms, take the pressure off, be human, humanize yourself,
Mhm.
which I thank you for. You've also told us that it's a process. It's okay if you don't just arrive, you know? Is there
Mhm.
anything else that you would like for us to know as mothers or just as parents in general?
Yeah. I think like one of the biggest things, it's okay to take care of yourself. It's okay to know yourself or to get to know yourself, right? Because I think a lot of things like what you were saying earlier, like about like, oh, does this trigger me? Does this trigger me? And as adults, like we're still figuring it out. Taking care of our own mental health is okay. It's okay. I feel like it makes you a better parent, right? Because it's like you think of like the history of trauma and like things that we've been through and the things that we've seen, the things we've experienced, and we're trying to break generational cycle. And it's like so many goals, right? But how do we do that without knowing ourselves? So it's okay. It's okay to address yourself, take care of yourself spiritually, mentally, right? Seeking out for
Mhm.
help, like all of that is okay. Because I just feel like, I talk with a lot of moms. A lot of them, I'm like, therapy will be good. It'd be good, right? And they'll be like, yeah, well, we'll see, right? It's like, kind of brushed off, right? But I just like, and again, like it takes a process of like doing that, finding the right person, finding the right professional, whatever, because I feel like we've
Mhm.
been giving these people in this profession to really support us, right? So it's okay to take care of yourself,
Yeah.
all that means physically, mentally, spiritually, doing a deep dive, like what happened, and like things from our past, how it impacts us now. So it's okay to take care of yourselves. It is okay. I know that I've told you this before. I love that you say like the best you makes the best mom for them. It's just so true. It's just so true. It really does. It just really does, right? If you're feeling
Yeah.
good in the good space, if you're triggered and you have the tools to be able to say, okay, this, and then it teaches them to respect that. And then vice versa, when they need it, you can learn to respect that. Like it's just so good. So good. So yeah.
And I'm telling you that I think I'm really appreciative of you, of conversations like these, because for so long we've been told that to be a good mom, you have to sacrifice yourself.
Mm,
And if you don't feel like you're bloody, if you don't feel like you have holes and that you run down, you're not doing a good enough job for your child. And so to hear that the truth is, no, you gotta, they say you can't pour from an empty cup.
mhm.
And so um, I'm very, very, very grateful for you, what you're doing. Um, and I'm very grateful for your transparency because we've come so systematic with parenting and that we're not giving that kind of grace to figure it out.
Yeah.
And so to hear from someone that is a professional, you went to school for this is your passion, you're dealing with children all day, to hear the other side, because you hear a lot of people that are in social work or counseling for children. Sometimes it can feel so dark and heavy.
Yeah.
But I thank you how you have those conversations. Like, look, this is what you can do. I mean, you see the worst situations, and you're still like, look, it's okay if you don't arrive. Just start, begin. And so I
Yeah.
really thank you for what you're
Yeah.
doing. So we'll definitely have you back on, you guys. I pray you have a wonderful day on purpose. If anything, we've heard from the Netties, it's on purpose. There's
Yeah.
strategy, there are processes, there are things that we can do to make impact on purpose, to intentionally do what we set our heart and mind to do. And so I hope you guys have a great day. Continue the conversation. Thank you again, the Netties, for your time, your heart, and your love.
No, thank
We'll
you.
see you guys again
Bye.
soon.